Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by PILMA. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Hey, podcast listeners, it's Gracie House, PILMA's Director of Operations and Marketing. I wanted to take a moment to thank you for tuning in to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast with PILMA's founder, Ken Hardison. I also wanted to extend a personal invitation just for you. This year, we're hosting the PILMA Super Summit in Denver, Colorado, and we can't wait to see you there. The fact that you're tuning into this podcast tells me you're a law firm owner serious about growing your practice, and that is why this is the event that you can't afford to miss. Over 3.5 days, you'll learn cutting-edge marketing strategies, innovative management tactics, and hear from the brightest minds and most successful attorneys and law firm owners in the industry. It's an experience that will inspire you, energize you, and give you the tools to take your firm to the next level. I'd love for you to join us and connect with fellow growth-minded attorneys who share your drive. But don't wait, seats are filling up fast. Head over to pilma.org/summit today to reserve your spot.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have the honor and the privilege of having Trey Harrell, a personal injury attorney from Charleston, South Carolina. Thank you, Trey.
Hey, thanks for having me. And, and before we do that, thanks for all you've done working with us for PILMA over these past years. So, I've been a mastermind for a long time, and it's been pretty beneficial.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully we've had some little bit of, contribution. I hope so.
Yeah.
No, and the reason you are in the mastermind, and the reason that I wanted you on this show is because of, you've been in this PI business very small amount of time, and I've seen you double the last 2 years in a row. And that takes a lot of work, and I don't see many firms do that. And so, especially in a market like Charleston, but people that don't know this, Charleston is a very saturated market. You got a lot of big TV lawyers down there. You got a lot of lawyers that are just flooding online marketing, really good marketers. I mean, some really good marketers. So to go down there and start, so when did you start doing PI work?
Yeah, well, brief backstory on me is I went to the University of South Carolina and got a degree in economics, and then ended up in law school. And how I got to law school is a story for another time. That could take a whole podcast, just telling that story. But after law school, I clerked for a judge, was a state prosecutor, got scooped up by a big firm in Columbia. And one of the things I can relate my success of my practice to is I know to listen to my wife when she makes suggestions. And one of her suggestions was, as soon as she got pregnant, as I was working for that big firm, she said, Columbia is fun, but we're going home. So we moved back to Charleston. I worked for a solo. I hung my own shingle, kind of doing a little bit of everything. And then I got offered my dream job as a federal prosecutor working with the high intensity drug task force, basically trying to stop fentanyl from coming to the state of South Carolina, and did that for a year. And it was great, but decided real quick I didn't want to work for the government anymore, right? And decided to go back and hang a shingle. But at that time I had 2 kids and my wife didn't work outside of the home. So we were doing everything that we could do, estate planning, criminal defense, auto accidents, anything that we could do to kind of pay our bills. And one day we were riding over 526. I remember this so vividly. And a buddy of mine had just had a very successful big pop auto case. And I looked at my wife and I said, honey, don't worry, just trust me, we'll get ours. And she snapped her head back at me and said, yeah, and it's not going to be estate planning. So yeah, I said, yes, ma'am. And about a month later, we really dove in to auto accidents, PI, but auto accidents in particular. My grandfather always taught me that singleness of purpose is something that is very important to be successful. And so that's why we decided auto accidents. And we just really dove into the auto accident, helping folks that have been injured in auto accidents, and really trying to learn everything we could learn about the business, and just kind of dove in. We had a handful of clients because we had the marketing from what we had done from from criminal defense and from estate planning. And so we just kind of leaned on that, as well as looking for other avenues, and just started growing it. And the more we grew the auto accidents, the less we did other things. And so that's kind of how we got to where we were and doubling it. And now typically all we handle is auto accidents. I still have a few criminal defense cases left over that we're still working through. But other than that, that's all we really do. And the reason we do that is so that we can focus on it and we can be really, really good at it.
Right. So when did you go all in on PI and just say, how many years ago was that?
That was in 2022, January of 2022. We really went all into it, started looking at various ways to get cases, whether it be lead generation, whether it be going and visiting with chiropractors and taking them donuts and cookies and all of those things, just everything you could think of to try to grab those cases, and just started trying to snowball it after that.
Yeah. So 2023, you double what you did in 2022.
Mhm.
And
Yes,
then,
sir.
and this year you've doubled it again.
We've doubled it again. And I think that goes to another thing. My grandfather, I'm not afraid to listen to other people, right? Because it's a lot cheaper to learn from somebody else's mistakes. And one of the things my grandfather taught me was don't be afraid to delegate. And so I went out and found really, really good people to work for me and with us and to really buy in. And but for those good people, whether it's my marketing director, Allie, whether it's the attorney who handles most of our pre-lit and litigation stuff in the firm, Tony, who you've met both of them, they're great. To Nessa, our intake, who just really, they buy into what we're trying to do here. And it just has been fortunate that that's how we've been able to grow. We utilize the good people and the skills that they have and lean on those skills. And that's what we do.
Yeah. Another thing is prove that you do learn more by others' mistakes. And I think that's one of the big deals from a mastermind. You find out what's working with the people across the country, but you also find out what's not working.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We joined PILMA in 2022, the spring of 2022. My first PILMA was this summer in New York when we went to TWA. That was awesome. That was my first mastermind, and really have just kind of leaned in to what those folks say. And I talk to those folks in my mastermind regularly. We refer cases back and forth, and it's really been something that's been very beneficial, mainly because you're building these relationships from people who are going through what you're going through. And so you have people to lean on.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I wish I'd had it. I'd have saved hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars back in the late 90s and early 2000s for sure. No doubt about it. So one thing that I noticed, and I've had some other of our masterminds on here, and we were talking about this before we started, but one thing that I noticed, two things I noticed about you, Trey, is that number one, when you left the mastermind, you went home and you actually implemented. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big deal with a lot of lawyers. They'll come to the mastermind meetings or they'll come to the summit. They'll get all jacked up and then they'll go back and then life gets in the way, business gets in the way, and they never get stuff done. And I think that is a key. I've always said the implementers are the ones that I see grow the fastest. And another thing that I'm seeing, and I think you proved this well, is that, you do a few cases, but probably 90% of the caseload is handled by other lawyers. And you're really just working on the business 24/7, basically doing all the different things you do. And you can talk about those if you want to, but I think that's a big deal, man. I really do. More and more I see the most successful lawyers, at least somebody in their firm is doing nothing, one of the lawyers, but working on growing the business.
Yeah, I think that is a strategy that we implement. I really lean on, in particular, Tony in my office. We've got other lawyers that work for us, but Tony's the one who kind of manages the auto accident pre-lit aspect and litigation stuff, and is really handling the day-to-day. Majority of my focus is on growing the business, but I'm brought in for mediations, for the high-level things on particular cases, just because it's kind of that other avenue and aspect of it. But I think the reason we've grown at the level we've grown at is because majority of my practice isn't majority of my day-to-day isn't on the minutia of what we have to do, getting records, making sure all the records come in, make sure that, because I can lean on the folks that we have that are good people and do their job very well. And I can focus on those little things like, hey, I can take time out of my day to come here and do this podcast, because hopefully somebody's listening somewhere else that needs to refer a case to somebody in Charleston, South Carolina, and they can go online and go to treyhelps.com and refer it over to us. You know, that you can do those little things that you can do to cause that pipeline to keep growing, because while sales doesn't fix everything, fixes a lot, right? And so as long as you can grow the caseload and do that, you can make the little mistakes, because you're still going to be able to have the revenue coming in from cases. To when you make the little mistake, you can go make it right and do the things you've got to do because you have the revenue coming in. And so I think that is a crucial part to what we do and why we've grown.
And another thing that you've done that most lawyers take some years to figure out is you figured out that you really got to be on top of intake. And your numbers, because I see them at the mastermind meetings and so forth, like you're above, you sign up over 92, 93% of every case you want. And that's remarkable.
Well, it's one of those things that we don't try to reinvent the wheel here. And if something is going to make it better, that's what you do. We focus on, Reagan, you and I've talked about this. You focus on signing up the cases you want, doing what you've got to do, paying attention, making sure your intake staff is really good. And then when you get the case, you've got to really focus on growing the value of the case, because it's a lot easier to catch the fish that's on the hook and then to get all the meat out of the fish you can once it's in the boat, right? Instead of trying to catch a bunch of other fish. Those are the two things that if you can really focus on maximizing your average case value and how to sign up the cases. And I can tell you, it's not that I figured out this great way to sign up more cases and how to do it. We've leaned heavily on Drive. They do our SEO. They've also got an intake accelerator. It's David Haskins. He's phenomenal. It's funny. I've actually known him since we were in high school. Our dad served in the House of Representatives together in South Carolina, but he is just very good. He's got a very good team that he works with and the things they do. And that is one of the key reasons we've really been able to grow our conversion rate, is because of that. Because we lean on somebody who knows what to do. It costs money, but like I joked about a second ago, sales can fix almost anything. So as long as we're signing up cases and maximizing value, we can pay for the services we need to do things better.
Yeah. I mean, if you just sign up 1 or 2 extra cases a month because of it, and if you're doing 93%, you're doing better than 98% of lawyers in America. I can tell you that.
We are very, very blessed.
I mean, I know this for a fact. You know, you've seen it in the masterminds. I mean, somebody's doing good if they're in the 80s. I mean, you know, and there's a lot of them that are in the 70s, but you're losing money. I mean, you spend all this money and time trying to get people to pick up the phone and call you, and then you don't handle it. It's like, I mean, and I've told this story before. I mean, back 25 years ago, our average fee was $8,000 in North Carolina. And I went to the bank, got $100 bills and went to my intake team and threw it on the table. And I said, which one of you want to throw this out the window? And they looked at me like I crazy. I said, well, that's what you're doing every time you don't sign up a case that we want. I said, you're throwing 8,000 out the window. It made an impact. I mean, you know.
You told me that story. That story made an impact on us. Because, I mean, when we were talking at the beginning of the year, we were at a beginning of 2024, we were at a 70% conversion rate. And so we really spent 2024 pumping that up, because you told me that $8,000 story. And I went and talked with Nessa, who runs our intake. She got it immediately. And we really focused on how to do it better. Now, another aspect of it is, once you get the case, you got to make sure that you're taking care of the client. You're providing that customer service that you need to provide and doing what you said you're going to do on that intake call, or else you're not going to get the calls in the future. So it's kind of this whole cyclical aspect that you've got to do. You could have a great branding, great marketing, great ability to sign up the case, but once you get the case, you got to be able to do what you told them you were going to do with it. And so I think that's another big focus on our growth, is we've made a very cognizant effort to provide the best customer service we can. Now, are we perfect every time? Absolutely not. Do we make mistakes? Regularly. And if you think you make zero mistakes, well, then the mistake you're making is thinking you make zero mistakes, right?
Right.
And so it's one of those things that you just got to be so focused on taking care of that client so that it's that cyclical world that you want it to be.
Yeah. So I know people are thinking, and if anybody knows the Charleston market, there's just a lot of advertising down there. I mean, there's some big, millions are spent on TV down there. I mean, it's a tough market.
Yeah.
So
I think it's just so great down here in Charleston. Weather's good, area's beautiful. All these big guys just want to come hang out in Charleston. So that we got that to compete with too. That, and we've got, we're one of the fastest growing areas in the country next to Texas. So we're getting the people. So I see why the big firms are coming to spend dollars, but we're also a different market than areas outside of Charleston. I see that talking to folks in our mastermind. People in Charleston and in the Low Country really care about authenticity. And so I think the way we're able to compete with the big guys who are spending the massive amounts of money is we're focused on being authentic and approachable, right? In today's world, it's not the days of the yellow pages where you put the good firm picture and that's all you had to do. You have to consistently be doing things to show who you are and what you stand for, which is why came up with this at a Key West mastermind, actually. Mastermind in Key West, our brand, our focus, our mantra is Trey helps, right? It's not Trey fights. It's not Trey wins. It's Trey helps, because it's not about what we do. It's what we can do for the client, the consumer, the customer. And that's the focus on. And so we try to do everything we can around that. Yeah, we do the traditional SEO and we've got some TV stuff and some radio, but a lot of things we do is we try to get into the community and do things. And we don't just do the things that everybody else would jump at. We take things that we really get behind and have a tie to. For example, one of the big things we're working on right now is we're working with Ronald McDonald House Charleston. Why? Because the Ronald McDonald House is awesome, right? What they do for families is amazing. But my mother-in-law, when she had her first child, had to live in the Ronald McDonald House for a few months and be there and do that and go through that. So when we got offered the opportunity to work with the Ronald McDonald House, of course we jumped right at that, because that's something that is close to me and it's genuine. There are other campaigns that we get pitched to be a part of. They're just not, it's not authentic for what I do or what I know or how I am. And so that's kind of a big thing for us, is the authenticity.
Yeah. And I know you do a little bit of radio and a little bit of TV this year. But the thing about the radio that I think you're smart about, and I've preached this for years too, is that you got to do more than just put ads on. You got to kind of link in with whoever the celebrity is on that station. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. Certainly. I think so many people, when they get into advertising and they try to do TV or radio or anything out there, they think we can just pay the dollars and then we're going to get the return on it. In a competitive market, you really have to focus on, like I said, being authentic and being out there. And one of the best ways to get out there is to go find some DJs or radio personalities and just be willing to go sit on their show and chit chat with them, and not necessarily chit chat with them about auto accidents or whatever else your practice area is. Just build a relationship with them and have a decent conversation, because let's be honest, we've all seen those Instagram ads or the radio commercials where these are the 4 things you should do after you've been in auto accident. You know what people do? They scroll right by that, right? Or they change the station whenever they listen. And the last thing a radio personality wants you to do is call somebody to change the station, right? So you just go on there and you just be yourself, figure out what you like talking about and do it. When we're done here in a couple hours, I got to head over to one of the local radio stations. It's a sports talk station. I do a segment on Mondays with them, and we just talk about everything. Now, I got plenty to talk about because I still believe my Gamecocks were screwed out of going to the playoffs, but we don't need to, that's not for here. That's for a different podcast. That's for that segment. But that's what we talk about. And so it's just being able to talk and be genuine and build that so that people feel comfortable. Because like I said, it's about being authentic and it's about being approachable. Going and doing those things is how you show that you are an approachable individual and they want to call you. Because in a hyper-competitive market like Charleston, we know that if you're going to call one of those big 800-pound gorilla law firms, you're probably not going to call me, right? If that's what you're looking for. So I've got to focus on getting the people who would call me to know about me and want to call me. And that's why you go to the radio stations and you do the things and you sit there and talk about it and just talk about things that are going on. Additionally, I think when people do grassroots marketing or anything else, they also tend to forget that the thing you're paying with for that, yeah, you're paying some money for it, but it's your time. Time is the commodity you're using. And so what's the ROI on that? And when you're first starting out, you're not billing $500 an hour for it because you're not well known. So it's going to take more time and more effort to see that ROI and to see that money come back. But once you start doing it and going and going and going, it'll come, and it'll also be much more enjoyable, and it's much more fun when you build your brand around stuff you like, stuff you don't mind talking about. Because again, that's more authentic and you're able to be more approachable.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, like, I like the fact that you don't just talk about injury cases on the radio shows. You talk about probably whatever's trending or whatever's big on the news or whatever. But people hire and refer to lawyers they know, like, and trust. And I think that's part of the whole deal being on there. They get to know you, like you, trust you. Plus, by that DJ talking with you, he's almost like endorsing you without endorsing you. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And I can tell you what's really, really funny. When people at the radio stations or at the TV studios get in car accidents, they call us, right? Because we've built that relationship. So while they might not have publicly endorsed me, the fact that they call me tells me that I'm conveying the message I need to convey because, like you said, know, like, and trust. They've obviously gotten to know me. They like me because they talk to me, and I've built trust over time with them. So that translates, if that's doing it, it's clearly what's working out and about in the community.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So any advice that you would give any young lawyers like yourself who's just starting out? I mean, don't have a boatload of cash, to start a firm or whatever.
Look, I was talking earlier on about things my grandfather used to say, and one of his oldest sayings was, the harder I work, the luckier I get. So if you don't have a lot of cash, you just need to find ways to get in front of people and to talk to people and to be you and your authentic thing. Because if you really lay into it and don't mind, I mean, I see so many young lawyers who they're phenomenal. They leave an insurance defense firm or they leave the solicitors. We call them solicitors here. Most states call them district attorneys. They leave a prosecutor's office and they're very, very good lawyers, but they just are used to that. Oh, here's the case. Let me work the case and I'm good at it. If you're really willing to put yourself out there and do the things you have to do, network, go meet with other lawyers, go talk to folks in your church, talk to folks wherever you are about what you do. Don't beat them over the head with it, but go build those relationships. That stuff will come. Go talk to chiropractors. Go talk to our nurses. Go talk to anybody you can talk to. Take them cookies. You can go to Harris Teeter and buy a pack of cookies for $6, put your sticker on it, take it to them and drop that off regularly. They're going to be very happy that you're bringing them cookies, right? They're going to remember you. They're going to get to know you. They're going to like you. And eventually they're going to trust you enough to refer their patients over to you. And when that happens, it just grows on it, right?
Yep.
My suggestion would be figure out who you want to be as a lawyer and dive into that. And you're going to get it. You're not going to take cases from the big dogs, right? When you start out in particular, you've got to figure out the type of person that is going to call you on the phone and want you to help them and then go after that person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that it really goes down. The other thing I can tell you to do is find vendors that can help you do what you want to do, build a relationship with them and do it. Like I've talked about Drive already on here. We work with another company called Merrick, who is phenomenal with records and whatnot. You got to go find the things that can help you do what you want to do. And you have to understand you don't know what you don't know. And if you're a smart lawyer, you know what you don't know, or you can figure out what you don't know and you delegate that out. Anytime we get auto cases that have massive complexity, we don't try to push them through and suffer through it. We go find the lawyers that handle those exact issues associate them, A, we learn how to do it, and B, the client gets a much better result. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you, because what I've seen is a lot of times young lawyers will call me up or talk to some of our people about joining the mastermind, and they'll say, "Oh, I just can't afford it." So I'm sure you had that thought when we told you. I mean, what made you say, let's go for it anyway?
We started signing up cases, and I knew I needed to go somewhere to get some kind of advice and do what we needed to do. And you and I actually got on the phone and talked for 15, 20 minutes. That really helped me. And the reason I led into PILMA is the different levels of mastermind, right? I looked around in my market and figured out or asked around who were the higher levels in my market. And they had practices like I wanted to have. And I really realized that, okay, if I was to join the mastermind and I do this, I can get to this guy's level. And then I noticed that guy moved up another level. And so as we would do that, that's another thing that really led to it, because it was all about getting to the next step. And I realized the way the masterminds were set up is I'm not in a room with a firm that's making 100 with 6, 7, 8 figures. I'm not in a room with an 8-figure law firm, right? I'm in a room with firms that are similarly situated with me that have my problems. Now I would like to get in the 8-figure room, right? But you have to get to the next step. And so the way that the masterminds are laid out in steps was another real big benefit to me, because I knew if I go and I learn how to do everything in this with this group and can do it and get better, I can move up a level. And then if I do that real well, I can move up a level. And last year you moved me up a level. So clearly I'm doing what my plan was.
Yeah. And I think it does help because I think you got different problems when you're under 2 million. I think when you're over 10 million, you got different problems. You know, it's a lot more about management than it is about, if you get to 10 million or plus, and we've got people doing 40, 50 million, you know how to get cases or you wouldn't be doing that much, right?
Exactly.
You figured that part out, but it's more complicated on the management side as the bigger you get. Because everybody just assumes that if you make more money gross, you're going to make more money net. And sometimes that's not true if you don't know what you're doing.
No.
And one thing my father always told me, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So it's not what you gross, it's what you net, right?
Yeah.
That's the big deal. Well, listen, we're hitting on 30 minutes. I'd like to keep these things 30 minutes. Any parting words to anybody out there?
Yeah, there's an old Babe Ruth quote when talking about marketing and grassroots. I wrote it down, so I made sure I'd say it right. But yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. Always be ready to adapt. Always be ready to adapt and move around. Because if you don't do that, you're going to get passed by. And particularly as a young lawyer with a new practice, be ready to adapt, figure out ways to adapt, and you'll be able to grow and do what you got to do. And join PILMA. If you want to grow your firm, join PILMA.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Trey. I really do.
Thank you. And if anybody ever needs me, they can find us at treyhelps.com, anywhere on social media at Trey Helps, or if you're ever in Charleston, just come by Herald Square and we'll have a cup of coffee or a beer or something.
That was great. All right. Until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.